Hello, it's Younghi. Before I get into an adoption-related topic today, I want to send my deepest sympathies to the families of the victims and the survivors of Jeju Air Flight 2216 that recently occurred. Today, I want to discuss the highly inadequate efforts made by the U.S. and Korean adoption industries in finding new homes for Korean children. To begin with, Korea facilitated the sale of tens of thousands of Korean children to other countries since the 1950s. Many of these children were labeled as orphans, despite having living family in Korea. Watch an eye-opening expose about Korea's unethical adoption practices at the link that I've provided in the comments below. In addition to making a large profit off the trafficking of Korean children, both Korea and the U.S. government failed to locate suitable, safe homes headed by stable adult parents. Instead, demand for ownership of Korean children by foreign white parents developed, and Korea worked hard to fill this demand. The children who were powerless victims at the mercy of adoption officials were commodified and exported to other countries, and this was for large sums of money. Not only were Korea's children sold for profit, but little effort was made to ensure that these children would become part of safe, stable, loving homes. In 1974, I arrived in the United States just under a year since I was found in Korea. At the age of 3, I joined the household of a white couple as an only child. My new parents had an unstable marriage. I was a last-ditch effort to save the relationship. This is not a reason to adopt a child. You do not place a child into a dysfunctional household. My father was a serial adulterer and often away on business trips. My mother was depressed and anxious and had an eating disorder. Over and over, she would ask if I thought she was fat and if I loved her. These are not the role models you give to a child. Mother would get stressed out being alone with me and often dealt with her problems by hitting me. Father would return and they would fight. My father kept me away from my mother, yet introduced me to some of the women with whom he had affairs. This situation continued for 6 years until my mother was hospitalized and my father told me they were going to divorce. My father was helping another woman raise her 2 sons when he should have been taking care of me, the child he ordered and paid for. It only got worse from this point on. Already traumatized from the separation from my Korean mother, I was overwhelmed, distraught, and in extreme fear of another separation. My adoptive father had abandoned us. My mother fell apart, often crying, lying on the couch, or hitting me. Much of the time, I had no idea where mother had gone. I was left alone with only cookies to eat. When I got older, I would steal money from my mother's purse so I could buy lunch at school. My mother and I fought regularly. Much of the time, no one knew where I was or cared when I would be back, or even noticed my absence. Finally, one day, my mother had had enough. She told me I was going to live with my father, and if he didn't want me, she would turn me over to social services. My father did allow me to come live with him, but his second wife did not welcome me. To this woman, an ideal family included my father, her, and her 2 sons. She soon made it clear I was not wanted. In addition to being unkind, she was cruel. Her abuse was psychological. She, a grown woman, was competitive with me, a child, for my father's attention. In her eyes, I could do nothing right. Every mistake I made was intentional on my part. I moved too slowly. I didn't house clean properly. I wore my shoes the wrong way. She felt that I did not deserve to have a family. So one day she took away my clothes and she made me put on rags. I was not allowed in any part of the house except for one square on the tiled floor. For over an hour, I was criticized and grilled. Despite my tears and apologies, there was no way for me to remedy the situation. I was wrong, I was bad, and I was unappreciative. Eventually, I gave in and said what she wanted to hear. I do not deserve a family. At other times, I had to stay in my room all day and night. Meals were left on a tray outside my bedroom door. I would receive milk, 2 slices of bread, and an apple. One day, I was given a frosted donut because there was a holiday. Sometimes there was no food at all. At one point, my father's second wife felt that isolating me was still not teaching me a lesson. She had my father build a small space at one end of the house that I lived in for a few months. I was kept in isolation but still attended school. Clothes I didn't like were chosen for me to wear. If second wife wasn't around, father would secretly drive me to school. I had to work in the yard to earn money so I could buy food from the grocery store. I did not know how to cook or shop for food. I was in 8th grade. When the family was finished in the main part of the house, I was allowed to come use the kitchen and the bathroom. Everyone avoided me and no one was to speak to me. There was constant explosive drama and upheaval in the house. Always, I was to blame. One day, second wife removed her wedding band and forced it on my finger, and she said, "Now Daddy and Princess can walk off into the sunset together." For 11 years, I was accused of lying, of being ungrateful, and of purposely causing trouble and just being a bad child. Second wife said she could not live a life of walking on eggshells in a family where I, the child, had all the power. Korean society had decided that whatever family I had in Korea, it was somehow not good enough and that I would be better off with a white family in America. People would tell me just how lucky I was. Sadly, I did have a good situation compared to others. I was not sexually, brutally abused for years. I was not beaten into unconsciousness or made to stand outside in the snow naked. I was not burned or sold to strangers for drugs. Yet we adoptees are told by Koreans, by Americans, by people who purchase adopted children, and by society that we should be thankful. Sometimes money and material goods cannot take the place of love or safety. Thank you for listening.